Tracy Momi Reads. I am back again with another book review. Today, I am going to be reviewing A Piece of Mind, a collection of short stories by J. California Cooper. A Piece of Mind. So one of the books that I always refer to or tell people that is one of my favorites, if like you're gonna, pin me down, put a gun to my head, is The Wake of the Wind by J. California Cooper. And I also read another book of hers called Life is Short But Wide that I really enjoyed. So I was watching a YouTuber who had read A Piece of Mind, and she was talking about how this was a really good short story collection. So I was like, well, I got to add this to my list. Well, this one was a different experience. And I don't know if it's because the short stories were so short. A lot of times, because I write novellas a lot of times, and a lot of times shorter stories, you get to the action quicker, you get to the point quicker. It's not a lot of time for character development. It's not a lot of build up and, all these other elements that make some stories, I don't want to use the word worthwhile, but, like if a character starts off like, there's no like character arcs, right? With short stories and novellas, there's just a point in time. There's just a period in time that you're kind of getting these stories, or they're being told with a big time lapse or jump, And I feel like that a lot of the stories in A Piece of Mind are that way, because they're short stories. But because they're that way, I feel like it gave me more of an opportunity to reflect on the storytelling itself. And let me tell you what I mean by that. Okay, and this one came out in 1984, okay? And I think another one, the book, I think Wake of the Wind may have came out in the 90s. So these aren't books like a Zora Neale Hurston or somebody writing books back in like, the 40s, 50s, or 60s. I mean, even with Toni Morrison, I know some of her books may have been in the 70s and then it moved forward to the 80s. But kind of like Toni Morrison, I feel like with J. California Cooper, the style that they chose to adopt in their writing is it's like common folk. I don't even know how to say or what the correct terminology would be, but the dialect and everything that they use in their books can be a bit distracting. And for people maybe who aren't from certain regions of the country, like the South or places where certain vocabulary is spoken. I'm gonna read a little excerpt just so I can give you an idea of what I'm talking about, okay? And I'm gonna take these glasses off to see. She made right smart of money too, because soon as she could, she bought a little house over there at the end of the main street, long time ago, so it was cheap, and put up a little stall for her vegetables and added chickens and eggs and all fresh stuff, Wasn't long before she had a little store and added more things. Now the men's took to hanging around her and things like that. She was a regular sized woman. She had real short hair and little skinny bow leg, things like that. But she was real nice and a kind person to everybody. So, as you can see, obviously, is it grammatically correct? Absolutely not, but she's telling it from the point of view, like the narrator is some omniscient person. In most of her stories is an omniscient narrator, right? But everything is kind of like small town sensibilities, and that's not what I really had a problem with. The thing that I had the biggest problem with, in all honesty, was that majority of the women in these stories were all like so down and out. It was low-key depressing to me. They had been abused. They had been taken advantage of. And I know that a lot of times, again, fiction sometimes mirrors reality. And depending on where you live and how you were brought up and different things like that, stories like this probably were commonplace. But I just found it just so, like, sad. It's like depressing. It's only one story that I feel like that I liked, that was one of my favorite stories, and it was called Color Me Real. And it was about this woman who was passing for white or whatever. But she was a black woman, but she was passing. I think her mom was black and her dad was white. She was passing, and she goes to the big city, and ends up going back to her small town where the love of her life was all along. So I feel like there was a story there, but it's like, there was a happy ending there. I feel like there was a happy ending there. But like, when she went to the city and she was passing, she got with this white man. He didn't treat her well when he found out she was black. Then she went back and she was with this black man. And when he found out she was black, he had a problem with it. So she just couldn't win. You know what I mean? And like I said, she goes back to her small town and she ends up meeting the love of her life. And she was also probably one of the only female characters in the book that, there was a couple of the characters kind of got like a satisfying ending, but her story was the only one that wasn't tragic from beginning to end. You know what I mean? She was kind of like making her own moves and doing her own thing. And it's just the theme also that I didn't like. Not only were the women, in these roles where they were just the subjects of abuse and neglect and all this thing, it also painted the black men in a bad light, because obviously they were the ones that were doing all of the abuse and the pedophile shit that was going on and all of that stuff. And I just, the trauma and the tragedies in this book, I just was not in the right headspace. I was not prepared. Like I said, I've read Life is Short but Wide. I feel like it was told in a similar voice, but because it was a full story, there were character arcs and people got to overcome things, and you got backstories as to why things happen. And with short stories, again, they're often kind of like rushed because you only have this short window to tell the story. And I just, I just wasn't in the right headspace. I think maybe it was just me. But the abuse and the trauma that all these women had to go through, and not loving themselves and thinking that that's all they were good for, that's all they could get. That's when I talked about, I don't know if you saw my video about our gen and talking about generational traumas and things like that. This is like the genesis, I guess, of where that kind of stuff started. Because she never like mentions in any of the stories the time frame. Like I said, this book was written in 1984, but I get the feeling that all these stories, hopefully they were taking place prior to that. But who knows? When I read Trevor Noah's book, Born a Crime, and that was in the 80s. Like, he was in South Africa doing apartheid, and it was illegal for a white man and a black woman to be together, and that was in the 80s. So maybe some of these stories were happening in small town America somewhere, but I would like to think it was just her imagination, her vivid and creative imagination. But yeah, all of them also, I feel like there was some fable type stuff going on, right? And there were lessons learned at the end of it, whether it was too late for the person that the thing happened to as the reader, maybe you were the one that was supposed to get the lesson. So, genre of this book, obviously, is Black African American. I think it's probably folklore, maybe, would be another category that I would put it in. Literary? I don't know. maybe it would, because of the author and the time period, maybe that's what it would be called. And like I said, this as far as the synopsis, it was just several short stories. Let me see. And there were like 12 short stories in here, with all female leads. Let's see. The thing that I did like the fable, parable aspect of it, like be careful what you wish for, karma. There were things like that. There were some themes like that kind of running through. Like one of the stories, the main character, like, she was always told how beautiful she was and how pretty she was, and she started to use that to her advantage. But the same thing that ended up being an advantage for her ended up being a disadvantage for her later on in life, as she allowed men to use her because she wanted money. So she would, put on this front because she's beautiful and she knows they're going to do anything. But then she came across the wrong person that started abusing her. And in the end, she was missing teeth and her eyes weren't as pretty and her hair had gotten matted. So her beauty was also the thing that, people lived for her beauty, but it ended up killing her type thing. So, but that's like such a heavy way to deliver, like a moral, if you will. But I did like that there was kind of something you could glean from the stories. While I felt they were still too heavy and depressing, there was something you could be like, oh, well, be careful what you wish for, or, bird in the hand type thing. And obviously what I didn't like, was just the tone of some of the stories. This is a perfect book if you're a fan of J. California Cooper or even a Toni Morrison, because like I said, the way that the stories are told is in a very, the dialect is of times past, or a Southern, rural type community, like maybe your great grandparents or grandparents type thing. If you like short stories, if you like stories that have kind of like morals to them, like moral, the moral of the story is like how fables are or something like that, then this is going to be a book that you would probably enjoy. As for me, I give it 3 out of 5 stars. And I really hate that because I loved, J. California Cooper's last 2 books. And I wasn't in the headspace for this. But I can't say that, if I read it in 6 months, my mind's going to change. I don't think that it will. I don't know that I'll ever be in the right headspace for A Peace of Mind, unfortunately. So there you have it. And I just want to add a disclaimer. I felt like I wanted to talk about this book because it kind of tied into another book, with our Jen that I was talking about, with the generational trauma and the things that people go through. I wanted to talk about this book because it was Black History Month. I wanted to talk about it to show that an author, like one book by an author, does not the sum of their work make. Like a book that I didn't really care for, but the same author wrote one of my favorite books. So that's the only reason I really, spent time on this one today. But I just want to, reiterate, typically books that I don't enjoy very much, I'm not going to waste my time doing like book reviews on them. So this one got to pass, but don't expect that in the future because, I would rather, share books that I really enjoyed with you guys to just kind of see, your thoughts on them. And there are going to be books that I didn't enjoy that a lot of people did enjoy, but I'm not going to talk about them on my channel. So that's the difference. If you have read A Peace of Mind and you are totally thinking I'm crazy, that you loved it and I totally missed the whole point, let me know in the comments what you thought, okay? Thanks so much for watching. Make sure you like this video and go ahead and subscribe to my channel. You're helping me reach a big goal. End of the year, we're going to get to 1,000. And turn on that post notification bell so that you don't miss any of the videos that I post. Thank you again for watching. And you guys have a great weekend. Bye.